Welcome to the meeting room at Global TV Talk Show, a broadcast service of globalbusinessnews.net.
This episode from the meeting room of Global TV Talk Show is brought to you by
The Bridge School, the accredited international online private school of choice, at bridgek12.org.
Porch Light Rental and Destination Services. Reduce your renter lump sum or managed relocation costs. Visit them at porchlightrental.com.
CubeMonk, featuring the world's first smart cube. Track your goods with our advanced GPS system. Welcome to the future of moving and relocation at cubemonk.com.
Primestone Partners, featuring corporate, government, and developer housing solutions, as well as senior-level advisory services. Find them at primestonepartners.com.
And by heirs.com. With our full range of services, we can help design and manage your international relocation. Find us at heirs.com.
Insured Nomads provides protection and peace of mind with health insurance, travel insurance, group, or tailored insurance for the globally mobile. Visit us at insurednomads.com.
And by International Auto Source. We are the vehicle experts for expats, featuring all major brands of automobiles with flexible solutions and financing. On the web at intlauto.com.
Become a global player in your field.
Cross Culture to Go provides virtual support for your global business and career success.
We can help you thrive in 140 plus countries and markets.
On the web at crossculturetogo.com.
This is Ed Cohen in San Diego, California, and you're on Global TV Talk Show. This is a business unit of globalbusinessnews.net. Check that out. Google Analytics has measured 1.2 million reader page views since '03. And they also say that last year, in 2020, the site has had 75,000 and a few more. And this year, 2021, through April 5, Google Analytics reported 20,207 page views. So that's a lot of eyeballs. About 70% US, Canada, Mexico, Rio, Sao Paulo, 20% Europe, 9% Asia Pacific. Fastest growth is in India from that region, and about 1% in Middle East and Africa. But I need to say that Dubai is far and away the strongest center, fast growth. So those demographics are going to be changing over the next 30, 60, 90 days, and we'll be covering that. So our very special guest today is two guys. You can see them right here. Stephen Howard is an author of 21 business leadership books, and he also runs Caliente Leadership, which is a hot consultancy on leadership. And also Dave Levine, who's a healthcare executive, global care experts, fostering healthy people and winning workplaces around the world, health, wellness, and fitness. Welcome, Dave Levine.
Thanks, Ed.
Yeah, and Stephen, thank you. Would you please self-introduce a little bit better than I just did and talk about this idea of Thrive XL?
Oh, thanks, Ed. And yeah, thank you very much. And Caliente, actually, the reason for the name is the second definition of caliente, which is a Spanish word, is passionate. And I'm actually passionate about leadership development, and the things I do. So that's where Caliente Leadership came from. But this program here was an idea I came up with. It's discussed with you, Ed, about 6 weeks ago or so. And I want to talk about Thrive, the importance for leaders to focus on well-being in the workplace and what we can do, all of us can do, to reduce stress, to reduce anxiety, to reduce angst in the work environment in our daily lives. It impacts our decision-making, which is a book I published a couple of years ago. And one of the books I published last year is called How Stress and Anxiety Impacts Your Decision-Making. And that applies both professionally and personally. So this is Thrive, and the XL part of the logo is XL is we want people to live extra large, thriving, striving, going the extra mile, putting in the extra effort. And when we talk about thrive, it's really about, it's more than the absence of illness or the absence of stress. It's just really being in the flow, on your back, moving forward. Yeah, that's one of the books, Better Decisions, Better Thinking, Better Outcomes. And that talks about how the brain gets impacted by stress and anxiety. So this is us. I welcome our viewers, and I welcome Dave as one of our guests, and I look forward to having more of these programs as we roll more out throughout this year.
So Dave, our audience is, as I mentioned, 70% US wide, including Toronto, a big audience there, and some growth in Latin America. So to what extent are you involved now with multinationals on this very special topic? Or is this topic just mainly US?
No, it's definitely global, as employers strive to expand their values and the services that go along with those values to their employee populations outside the US. It's most mature. Workplace-based employee support is most mature in the US because of how we reimburse healthcare, being primarily the employer's responsibility. So it doesn't have the financial incentive in most countries. Brazil's an exception, but most countries as it has it in the US. But definitely, employers have gotten beyond the health impact on the impact on healthcare claims and getting in front of those to value employee engagement, cultures of health, winning cultures that are important in any culture, however healthcare is reimbursed.
So when you say how it's reimbursed and all that, so in other words, in a more social, I hesitate to use this political term, but caring state environment, whether it's Brazil or someplace else, a lot of national health covers this amongst everything else, right?
Exactly. However, behavioral health is oftentimes absent from the national healthcare plans, even the wraparound plans that complement those. And I think national health or social, it's not such a politically charged term outside the US. That social reimbursement, social delivery of healthcare, it's seen more as a privilege, more as a right, not so much a privilege. And except for the US and Brazil, 80% of healthcare is reimbursed by the state, and unlike 55% in the US and Brazil.
What about Canada?
National health plan, administered through the provinces, but there are some federal guidelines, and all countries spend a heck of a lot less than the US does. And the mortality, although people come to the US for healthcare, it's a big business, and there's no question that people get the best healthcare, particularly for very arcane illnesses. But our infant mortality rate, our longevity doesn't stack up with the 10x we're spending on healthcare compared to other countries.
Interesting. So you mentioned behavioral. What does that mean in English?
Stress, depression, anxiety, and even social issues, family, sandwich generation, conflicts within the family relationships.
Yeah. So are the corporates, let's just say America, are the corporates in America who you've been in contact with over the years, and particularly now, COVID impacted, are they caring more? Are they more empathetic, or is that just BS?
I don't think it is BS. Some employers, cultures differ. You can't generalize about all employers. Some are more autocratic, theory X, top down. Some are truly inclusive, and culture is truly important. And I think they've recognized the importance of behavioral health. And here in the US, there's something called the Mental Health Parity Act of about 4 or 5 years ago. So if an employer offers healthcare, they have to include behavioral health coverage as part of that healthcare. And they've been around for 10 years or so, but 5 years ago, they took the loopholes out of that. So it has to be reimbursed on a level on par with other medical problems.
So Google acquiring or absorbing Fitbit is like, it's kind of a no-brainer fit, I guess. But that's the idea, though, is to create a happy place for wellness, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think Google did that not only for their own employees, but they're getting into healthcare, as are other major organizations, and using their big data, understanding of healthcare and differences around the globe, and recognizing they need some more content to address healthcare. And why not start with wellness? It's an easier, less regulated place to start. So a Fitbit acquisition sort of makes sense.
So back in the day when you were senior VP, or I think Optum.
Optum International.
Yeah. So that's a healthcare provider, right?
Right.
Yeah. And international means outside the U.S. Exactly.
And Optum bought PPC strategically in 98, 90. No, it was later than 2008. I'm sorry. Because they saw the growth potential, and they saw a lot of their bread and butter clients, the HPs and IBMs and Procter and Gamble's, et cetera, having multinational populations for whom they wanted these employee support services. So strategically, they wanted to become stickier. And if they had offered international services or a relatively consistent employee support benefit, employee wellness benefit around the globe, that would make them more attractive to these large clients. And the politics and the environment have changed since that 2008 acquisition. I'd say over the last 6 years, there was sort of, because of our financial economics in the States and political leadership, I think there was more of an isolationist view, particularly in the last 4 years. And I think United Health Optum read that, and it probably did not invest in international, outside the US, in healthcare delivery as they might have at the time of the acquisition. But it's definitely a changing environment, and who knows now with the new leadership in the White House and how things might change further.
Something that's really neat is that the Bridge School partners with various organizations to provide learning for their students. For example, we partner with a major ballet company, and we are able to enroll several of their students into our school. So now not only is the student able to participate in a school and have a seamless transition while they're very active in their ballet career, but now they have other dancers that are with them that are doing some of the same courses. So it's almost becoming a camaraderie where they're taking similar courses, they're working together on their ballet, and really being able to form this great partnership with these organizations to provide a needed service. A lot of times there are student athletes who will spend hours and hours at the gym or at the basketball courts, wherever it is. And if they're attending a traditional school, they're in school from 8 to 3. They get a quick snack, and then they're at the gym for 3 to 4 hours in the evening. Coming to us and having that partnership, they're able to break that up throughout the day. They can have a morning practice, get some schooling in, have an afternoon practice, finish their schooling in the evening. So there's that flexibility. And additionally, if there are tournaments or performances, it's fantastic, because if there's a week where they have shows straight through, they can take that week off of learning and then pick back up when they're done. So it offers this great flexibility. And for the program owners of these sports leagues, it is a win-win situation for them, because they see this need. They see this need that their students need to make sure that they are obtaining the grades necessary to be successful adults in our country and in other countries. But it provides them an environment where they can be successful at both.
So I want to go to Stephen in just a second, but one of our advertisers, banner advertiser on our general information site, globalbusinessnews.net, is telehealth called betterhelp.com.
Mhm.
All right. And that is like a phone in, even a text in mental health outlet, right? It's super popular out there and relatively low cost. So this kind of thing is all about wellness, isn't it?
It is. And
It's a safety valve or something, or what?
well, what COVID did, I think, back to your other question, I think employers recognize the importance of behavioral health, but COVID really brought it home, and it not only increased it obviated the mental health needs that were out there, the isolation and parenting and at-home schooling and all the social adjustments that came along with COVID. I think it really emphasized behavioral health, and it forced a new way to deliver, to engage employees and to support them in their mental health at home. So I really do think it has had a positive impact. So companies like Live Health or Better Health and others have really taken a more prominent role in the digital delivery of behavioral health.
Yeah. Stephen, what say you?
I totally agree. I mean, what strikes me as so strange, particularly pre-COVID. I mean, human nature is funny. As human beings, when we get tired, exhausted, we can tell our colleagues, you know what, I'm tired. I had a bad night's sleep last night, and I'm gonna take a few minutes break or blah blah blah. But if you told those same colleagues, my brain is fried, I got stressed, I'm anxious. And they look at you and say, what are you, weak, man? Pull up your socks, come on, get back in the game, Maverick, sort of thing. And it's just the way we approach it. I think hopefully out of COVID and the pandemic, leaders are learning that we are human beings and we have these pressures and stresses, and we will bring them into the workplace environment, and leaders are going to have to deal with them, quite frankly.
Dave?
I think that's right. And they've recognized it more, and they've offered, thankfully in the US, but also outside the US, regulations about reimbursement of video conferencing, telehealth services has relaxed some. So providers can get paid when they could not see somebody, both medical and behavioral, when they could not see somebody in person. But telehealth is a great response for a lot of ailments, including behavioral health, and regulations about that have relaxed. So we've seen a lot of activity, merger and acquisition activity, emphasizing behavioral health. This enormous Centene acquisition, 2.2 billion acquisition last January of Magellan. They have more than behavioral health, but it's a prominent part of their business. There's been others too. TELUS Health in Canada acquired EQ Care, emphasizing behavioral health again. Anthem's probably six months ago now, 9 months ago, Anthem's acquisition of Beacon Health, emphasizing behavioral health again. So in spite of the lack of revenues and downturn of the economy that we've suffered the last year, there's been quite a bit of activity on the behavioral health side.
So now let's go to gender, okay? With more women in becoming leaders of business. I don't want to stereotype here, but it just seems that, women get it. This is not a soft cost. This is hardcore people, right?
The cost is tremendous, Ed. I mean, I read recently McKinsey did a survey in Australia, and it reported that actually it was the Australian Productivity Committee did it as well with McKinsey, estimated that mental health conditions cost Australian workplaces $17 billion every year through absenteeism and lost productivity. I mean, it's just when leaders start to realize how this hits the bottom line, I think they're gonna understand, they're gonna get it a lot better.
Right. Thank you, Producer Paul, for putting that up. Dave, do you want to just chat about this a little bit?
There's a big cost, way outside of healthcare. Employers want to get in front. I saw some research yesterday. I'm trying to think who just another piece of research that cited the higher engaged population, the happier population, the more profitable the organization was. There's different, again, outside of health claims and health costs, there's lots of other costs that employers suffer. And generally, it's not such, it has been soft, but it's becoming harder and harder that a happy organization is a more profitable organization.
So, Stephen, better decision. I mean, it's a no-brainer to take care of people. So it's a better decision, right?
Well, you would think so, but unfortunately, I think sometimes people just have their eye on the bottom line. I mean, earlier, back in March, Goldman, they had employees complain they were working 100-hour weeks.
Well, I saw that.
Yeah, article and
me too.
Yeah, and, you know, how can you have young people working 100-hour weeks and not burn them out and not even be aware of it? And I'm not exactly sure how well the CEO of the organization addressed that issue. Because the articles I read, it was kind of like, oh, we will take care of this in the future. I read a couple of days ago they've hired 100 new bankers to help alleviate this. You know, 100 new bankers, bringing them in. I mean, 100 hours a week, people are working week in and week out. And there's a societal cost as well. Another article I read recently, Generation Z and Generation Y, which is the bulk of the workforce right now, they're displaying a more pronounced decline in both physical and mental health in comparison to how their grandparents and their parents were at the same age. So, you know, you got people in their 30s and their 40s showing higher declines in both physical and mental health than people like, you know, us baby boomers and the millennials, quite frankly.
Well, I remember when I was that age, we used to go out dancing, rock and roll, or playing sports outside with a team approach. And for the last year and a half, that hasn't happened much.
No, not at all. Not at all. And it's going to be a huge societal cost. I mean, I love, you know, I'm you know, very empathetic for the government and the things that they're doing to get the economy back working. But I do think people, particularly in Congress, need to have a longer term view now and start thinking about what is going to be the impact 8 years from now, 10 years from now, from, you know, the brain fog that people got right now from the lockdowns. We're aware of it. We know the short-term implications of it, but the long-term implications can be pretty significant, and we need to be prepared for it now. We're preparing for it now. We can't wait till 2030 and suddenly say, oh, we need to throw money at this problem, because by then it's going to be too late. So
we need somebody like Arnold Schwarzenegger, you know, to get up there and get everybody to do some calisthenics or yoga or something, right? Stretching. And I should stand up, as a matter of fact.
There you go.
Yeah. All right. Paul, producer Paul, if you could put up that package that Dave Levine was kind enough to, the beautiful package that you did, Dave. Okay, Dave Levine, thank you very much for putting this together. It's a beautiful portrayal. Okay, Paul, if we can go to the first slide, that'll be great.
You know, we've been talking about some of this. COVID has really accelerated the focus on behavioral health issues, but terrorist attacks and everyday stress, and as Stephen was talking earlier, the 100-hour work weeks at Goldman Sachs, but others, these behavioral health issues have been prevalent. Employers also want positive cultures, engaged workforces, as we talked about, and there's some research that talks about the improved earnings per share of those organizations that survey their employees and show higher engagement than employers that don't have that high level of engagement. Crises happen around the globe, whether it's a terrorist attack, a natural disaster, an unexpected death. They happen and they shake up the workforce, and they're ungrounded for a while, and services help them get their feet back underneath them. There's generally there's stigma, as we were talking earlier, in the States about accessing behavioral health, but outside the US, there's even more stigma and even fewer resources. And for lots of employers, they just don't have the staffing around the globe. Maybe 1,000 employees is in India. India, incidentally, for a US-based multinational, oftentimes the second highest concentration of employees is India. But even 1,000 employees, they usually don't have a specialist familiar with workplace-based wellness services to take charge. So they really have to take some leadership and trust a lot of their vendors. And there's only a handful of international vendors that can provide a consistent global offering, a relatively consistent yet culturally adapted wellness program. So I mean, those are generally the problems, the needs that lead employers. And if you'd flip to the next slide, good. Those needs are sort of summarized on the left that drive employers. And we were talking about earlier in this COVID environment. This is research from TripleTree, an investment firm based in Minneapolis that consults and leads a lot of M&A activity in the healthcare field. They just published a paper on virtual health, fascinating, just documenting the shift of services over the past year. But their research says that 45% of adults feel that we're in stress related to the COVID-19 has definitely impacted their health in a negative way. And employers are realizing 2 to 4 times the healthcare costs influenced by behavioral. Mandy Conforti, a Chicago-based consultant, she's also an MSW, been in the field for years, really lives and breathes behavioral health for primarily US customers. She sometimes ventures into multinationals, but she's got a quote here that pay attention to it, emphasizing the increased importance of COVID. But as Steve was saying earlier, also look at the long term. This shouldn't be a flash in the pan. Look at the long-term impact of this on your workforce. Next slide, please. This continuum has been helpful to me, looking at very urgent and high-risk cases, but low volume of cases. Outside the US, I think employers have generally invested in the left-hand side of that continuum. They haven't reached a lot of people, but when they need help, they need it now. And that's even in EAPs, that's been the most, in my experience, been the most valuable service that an EAP has delivered. When there are floods in Chennai, for instance, or a terrorist attack in Belgium or London, that responsive, passionate assistance to come alongside and support employers has been critical. Going up the continuum, you reach more people through an EAP and wellness programs, you throw a wider net and you engage more people. It's less intense, less urgent. Some people say as you move up that continuum that you're serving the worried well of the workplace, but you're definitely intervening earlier ahead of those, in worst case scenarios, suicides, but high cost claim dollars in the US and higher turnover, disengaged workforce, and burnout, as Steve was citing earlier.
I want to jump in, and this is to the audience, this is not rehearsed. So we do this on purpose, audience, to be authentic and spontaneous and try to mirror what I think the audience wants to know about. So there's active shooters the past couple of months, right? Across the US. There's COVID. There's worry about being infected by the kids who haven't got the vax yet, all right? And then bringing disease into the house. And yet the miracle from most of the vaccines is that once you get it, you're basically immune to the 95% level, thankfully. So the more people that get the vaccine, the more the temperature in the population is reduced. But with these shootings and COVID and social unrest, political issues seemingly dividing, or the constant media bombardment about all this stuff happening, is creating fear in the population, general population. Stephen, in your background, particularly in marketing, what do you think about all that relevant to this thriving idea?
You're absolutely right, Ed. In fact, one of the things I coach people on, I do some leadership wellness coaching, and one of the things I suggest to people is to lower your blood pressure is don't watch cable news at all. None of it, because it's all about breaking news type stuff. It's not a political statement. It's every cable news channel. I mean, I remember I was going through an airport in Denver back, I don't know, a year and a half ago before COVID hit. And we knew that I can't remember his name, the Supreme Court nominee was going to be testifying to Congress at 11 o'clock on a Wednesday. And I'm going through the Denver airport, and suddenly all these TVs start going, breaking news, breaking news. He's about to appear before Congress. I'm going, that's not breaking news. We knew about it. I mean, but they keep us on the edge of our seats, or they try to, and they try and get us back and get us to watch for longer hours. And you're right. It's the media right now, I think, is the number one blame for a lot of our societal ills and the behavior ills that David's talking about in our society. Quite frankly, it's just causing stress. So number one thing I do to tell people, don't watch cable news. You'll be a lot better off. Yeah. Watch global TV talk show instead.
Yeah, right. Or tune into our show with Angelo Molino about music therapy. And he's playing the piano.
Exactly.
It's really, so Dave, what do you think about all that? Is that the answer?
It's one of the answers. That old, whether it's an American Indian tale or not, you heard different versions of it, but you've got a dog on each shoulder, and one is barking at you to go one direction, and another's barking at you to go another direction. And the question is that which dog is going to win? And the response is the dog you feed. If you're feeding your dog with cable news, no matter right or left, what side you're on, you're going to pay attention to that dog, and that dog's going to win, and that's the direction you're going to go. I agree with the advice to the TV, even local news, but it's not like those other stressors went away with COVID. We're continuing to deal with relationship issues, financial stress, anxieties, depression, parenting issues, and they've all been amplified by COVID. And I think that it has cut through some of the stigma we were talking about earlier. And I think that people appreciate behavioral health more. And I think that's a big reason behind some of these acquisitions and mergers that we're seeing. With the emphasis on more digital, I mean, the counseling and training and higher touch services remain important, but from a delivery point of view, it's in the providers, the suppliers' interest to leverage technology as much as possible. And from the employer's point of view, it's important to leverage technology to improve access and further engage more and more people, particularly the generations that comprise the majority of the workforce today. We're much more technologically savvy than I am.
Stephen?
Dave's right, and the only thing I would add to that, I think, is that we have to learn to be more human, more kind to each other. I think that's one of the positives that's come out of COVID. When I'm coaching leaders right now, I tell them, I don't care if you talked to your employee yesterday or a week ago, the first question you should always ask on a Zoom call right now is, how's the family doing? And then, how are they doing? And don't let them just get away with saying, fine, I'm fine, everything's fine. No, people are not fine. They have bandwidth connection issues. I mean, you got the wife, they're both spouses working from home. You got the children being schooled from home. You got 3 or 4 computers all trying to access the internet at one time, and everyone's getting slowed down, and dogs are barking in the background on all Zoom calls, and everyone's on mute, and there's a lot of frustration being built up. We just have to learn to be kind to each other, and most importantly, just ask about each other. What can I do to help? We have to get back to, I don't want to call it a soft skill, but I think emotional intelligence, I think bringing EI back into leadership is going to be one of the skills that will define the difference between a good leader and a great leader in the next 5 to 10 years.
So all of this seems to me to not put a crimp in it. That's not what I want to say, but sort of put a delay on getting people back together in an office setting?
There's a lot of concern about that. Unfortunately, the organization, I'd love to hear from Dave on this, because the organization I've been talking to, and again, it's from a different approach. Right now, so many people in HR are only worried about policies. What's going to be our social distancing policy? What's going to be the, how are we going to handle requests to do hybrid work situations? Everyone's get the policy done from a compliance standpoint, not from a human standpoint. And I think that's still missing. I don't think we've learned from that right now. But Dave, what's your experience with the organizations you're talking to about going back to the workplace?
Yeah, Google is always progressive. It got a huge ratio of HR professionals to employees. And I think people look to them rightly as a policy leader here. And they just announced last week that they were emphasizing the return to work policy. And as valuable as remote working, work from home has been, and as productive it's been, they felt they were missing something. The camaraderie, the spirit, the collaboration that occurs from on-site. I think things are changing. I think we're going to see a lot more work from home on a permanent basis. Maybe coming into the office specifically to encourage that kind of collaboration that happens in person, those casual conversations and team building. But I also think we're going to see a continuation. I was on a conference earlier today with the Employee Assistance Forum of European, EAEF, European Employee Assistance Forum, and Greg Delap, the CEO of Employee Assistance Practitioners Association, the largest group of its kind professional association, cited research from their membership that utilization of EAPs have increased across the board, ranging from 30% to 100% from their members in surveys they did. All of them were up, but they ranged from a modest 30% increase to over 100%. Now, of course, there's some subjectivity there, but in terms of how you count utilization, there always has been in the field, but it was all up in, and that was from the US to Europe included.
No stigma, right?
Decreased stigma. There's still stigma, yeah.
Boy, this is a very interesting conversation. And I think, Stephen, I think we've accomplished what we set out to think about.
Yeah, it's a heavy topic. There's no doubt about it. But it's an important topic, and you know, it's one of the reasons we're doing this program is to get people thinking about these issues and talking about these issues, and hopefully finding resources. I mean, you know, finding resources like Dave out there, and being able to talk to somebody like him with a great deal of experience, and particularly you know, the mid-sized companies, you know, the multinationals, they're always going to have resources available. But, you know, I'm thinking about the guy who, you know, has a manufacturing company with, you know, 200 employees and doesn't know where to turn. And, you know, hopefully through this program, he'll find resources like Dave and others out there. And he probably doesn't even know what an EAP is right now. And so if nothing else, he starts to understand that, hey, others are in the same boat and there are resources available to them.
Dave?
You see an organization just, I'd mentioned TELUS Health out of Canada, their acquisition of EQ Care. A Montreal-based group called Carebook just acquired a 30-year-old organization I'm very familiar with, Infotech, and their health risk assessment in 26 languages. You see shifts like this in the industry to emphasize that digital front door, as I was the increased technology, both from a supplier perspective and an engagement perspective that employers value. The more savvy and personalized that experience can be, the more accessible those services are. And we can do a lot, both from promoting services from an employer perspective and delivering services from a supplier perspective to leverage technology like that.
Yeah. Dave, let me ask you before we close off, because this is one of the key questions I have is, so from your expert opinion, is workplace wellness, is this a trend or is this just a fad? Is this something going to die out in the next 18 months and we're going to go back to forgetting about it? Or you see this as a long-term trend?
Well, I started in the field in the early 80s, and you could have asked the same question then. It's definitely evolved and taken different shape. And whereas in the early 80s, the focus was alcoholism and addiction, and it expanded to broad brush, depression, anxiety, family issues. It expanded further to work-life issues, legal and financial issues, child and elder care. And I think we're in an era now where it's focused on organizational culture and the health of employees in terms of being part of an organization that values them, respects them, and fosters a culture of health. Who knows what the next drivers are going to be for employers, but I think that what's not going to go away is that happier, healthier employee is a more productive employee, and ultimately that's going to be more profitable for the organization.
Hopefully hopefully that's the message that is the next driver is that, hey, there is a bottom line upsides to this. Unfortunately, people do have to run businesses and do have to worry about their profitability, but if the more they hear the message that, that there's the bottom line positive impact by putting these kind of workplace wellness programs and practices into place, hopefully that becomes the big driver.
So Paul, producer Paul, thanks for putting up those slides. It was excellent, particularly leaving this last one up because it's a nice summary. And Dave, why don't you just tell us what we're looking at here? This is access.
I made the point a moment ago, but that digital front door, that technologically, that leverage of technology to engage more people, to throw a broader net, offering self-help, immediate self-help, and in doing so, engaging somebody. So you can do that through an assessment, through the Fitbit acquisition by Google, through health challenges. You can do it in various ways. Biometric screening, health promotion, health risk assessments. But I think the easier we make it, literally in the palm of your hand with our phones that everybody's got, and that's global. That's not limited to North America. If we can bring health and into the palms of our hands, and we can engage more people at an earlier point and bring the behavioral health services, which people are reticent to just call up and access on their own, we can engage people further and have a better opportunity to get at that underlying issue that may well be behavioral health.
Dave, what is your website?
Globalcareexperts.com.
Okay. Thank you for being our guest today. I just want to sum up by recalling something that I think you and I have talked about in the past, a long time ago. Oh, thank you. A long time ago, maybe 10, 12 years ago, I produced a series of live conferences in New York and Chicago and even Sao Paulo. And our guest was Dr. John Pompey from Caterpillar and his provider, Chestnut Health. So I was very fortunate to have these guys involved because Caterpillar, being the kind of company that they are, heavy equipment and moving dirt, all that, they had one hell of a problem with their expat community, with burnout, mental health, big personal problems, and productivity and costs went through the roof. So with the provider and Dr. Pompey's enlightenment internally there, they came up with a measurement device and the forerunner of something like BetterHelp.com, whereby there was a counselor without stigma and confidential, whereby the truck driver or the machine driver or the whatever could get some help immediately. And they measured results. And they proved it to senior management, the value of an expanded EAP program for expats and assignee families. Mm-hmm. They proved it, and they showed the documentation. And then they got whatever they needed in funding, and they had success. And the ROI of their assignment program went sky high.
Yeah, I know John, and I'm familiar with that program that Chestnut developed for them.
Yeah.
The Workplace Outcome Suite you're referring to, WOS. And not only did Chestnut offer that to their customers like Caterpillar, but they offered it at no cost to any AP who wanted to adopt that Work Outcome Suite to get a bigger database and more impact. It measured absenteeism and presenteeism. There's 3 or 4 major measures, and you're right. It's been one of the valuable tools that tied a cost benefit to otherwise soft services. Done a great job. Chestnut was acquired by Morneau Chappelle, based in Toronto, and I expect that workplace outcome suite still continues under Morneau's leadership. But John Scheer and others were involved with that development of that, and I'm glad you cited that. It's a whole new dimension of the field. You measure it, you can't manage it, and that
exactly. Well, ROI is one of my pet themes that are going forward in every program we have to talk about ROI of corporate policy relevant to assignment management. How do you measure ROI of mobility, internal mobility as well as external mobility? And it's a big problem. And so nobody knows what to do about it, frankly. So this kind of discussion, Thrive and Strive, makes a nice package, Stephen.
Good. Well, let's keep doing it. This is a great message. And David, I appreciate your time today, because
I learned a lot from you, Steve. I appreciate yours. Thanks.
Always
a pleasure.
Dave, please come back on Global TV, and we welcome your suggestions as to who else we could invite into this talk show.
Super.
Keep on thriving.
Yeah. So bon voyage, Stephen, and let's be in touch on the other side of your trip.
Thank you. I'll see you next week on our show Thrive, or our show Strive XL.
Yeah. So Dave, you may want to tune into this one if you're available next on the 29th of April at 9:30. Yeah, 9:30 California time.
Uh-huh.
All right. It's our guests are, one is Payman Dayani, who's Chief Administrative Officer of a company that's based in Tehran, Iran.
Wow.
And he has been our guest before, and he's agreed to come on our Strive show to talk more about the food company. It's called Solico, Solico. And it's Iranian owned. It's a private company. And in an earlier life, this gentleman was in charge of Nokia in Africa and the Middle East, and then went back to Tehran, working in telecommunications, private companies. Okay. Also on that same program is going to be an old friend of mine, Sandrine Bardot is her name. And she's from Paris originally. And in an earlier time, in fact, 1999, she spoke at my live conference in Paris when she was head of Comp Ben for Microsoft Europe.
Oh, wow.
And she then moved on and moved to Dubai and has been there now 13 years. And now she's got her own business, compensationinsider.com. And so she's going to bring the Comp and Ben thing to this discussion on April 29, along with Payman Dayani. This is going to be a fascinating program, Steve. Yeah.
Looking forward to it.
Dave, I think you might want to think about joining that program and bring this Thrive idea into and hear what they have to say about it.
Can a US-based company even do business with an Iran-based company?
That I don't know, frankly. But
they used to be on a do not touch list with like 10 or so other countries.
Yeah,
and
so this is a private, and there's no financial transactions. unfortunately.
Oh, no, not regarding this deal. I'm just saying for the business that he intends to deploy, and I think there are probably some challenges in the U.S., not only perceptual ones, just regulatory ones. That
Yeah. So
probably-
we thought about it. Let me just say, and this is still being recorded, by the way. About 6 years ago, I invited Payman when he was working at a senior level with a privately held energy company like the Exxon of Iran. It was called Dana, D-A-N-A. It's still around. And so he was very senior there. And I asked him to be my guest interview in our print publication, which primarily was online. And it was called Global HR. And he said,
well, yeah.
and he said yes. Okay. And so I said, "You sure you want to do this? I don't want to get you in trouble, and I don't want to get in trouble." And so he said, "No, don't worry about it. I'm not going to answer anything I shouldn't, and just be careful what you ask." And so we did that, and it came out. It was a really big hit, and so we stayed in touch, and everything's nice.
We'll have to see Google Analytics and find out how many people from NSA watch next week's show.
Well, we've had a surge from Russia. All right, this is a Global TV talk show, and it's been educational to say the least having you guys on. Thank you.
Great.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Ed. Thanks, Dave.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us in the meeting room at Global TV Talk Show.
Have a wonderful day, and stay safe.